you seeing the same level of medical exemption and or religious exemption requests for masking and other requirements as well?
The religious exemptions are, in a sense, I think it's fair to say that they're viewed as much looser. The medical standards are just like the ADA. I mean, they're medically driven, and there's an objective basis for either, accepting the medical condition and accommodation request, or asking for more objective reasons or more objective explanations. But in the area of religion, a sincerely held religious belief is what it is. I mean, sometimes it's just about impossible to question that. So if you're an employee and you're thinking about, I really don't want to do this vaccine thing, how am I going to get an exemption here? You're looking at a religious exemption as opposed to a medical exemption. With a medical exemption, you have to have a defined medical condition.
And it has to be supported by medical documentation, a doctor's note. I think that's what is making the religious exemption trickier for employers, is that you don't necessarily need to provide, a note from a religious leader supporting this request. It can be something that's just based on a personal religious belief. And even if it's not in line with a particular faith, it can still be the basis for an exemption request. And I think one thing we're seeing a lot of now is there's kind of a fine line between a religious belief and a political belief, a personal belief. And now employers are having to kind of draw that line, and that's challenging for employers to do.
I've read that there's sort of a cottage industry popping up of websites that are directing employees on how to frame their religious exemption requests so that they'll be able to get them approved and compliant.
Yeah, and we're getting those letters. You recognize them right away. It's like, oh, it's that, kind of letter. But nevertheless, they can be easily tweaked to make them personal enough to an employee that it makes it difficult. It's a difficult decision for an employer in that situation to deny a request if the employee is careful enough to couch their religious beliefs in terms of their own personal views. Even if in the case of, this has come up a lot for us, the Catholic faith. So the Pope has come out and said it's okay to get vaccinated, but we still are seeing requests from employees based on their Catholic faith, personal to them, not to the clergy, that is underlying their request. So as an employer, what do you do in that situation? Do you say, yeah, your religion is saying it's okay to get vaccinated, but for you personally, it's, you're religiously opposed to that?
And another thing that's different about the religious exception is that the undue hardship analysis is different. It's actually, a lesser burden for employers to show an undue hardship. They just have to show more than a de minimis burden. So, that's the flip side here, is that for employers, these religious exemptions may be, that may be more broadly defined, but employers may also be able to, meet the undue hardship analysis a little bit easier or more easily than they would for the disability piece.
And we're even seeing exemption requests to wearing face masks based on religion. God created me in His own image, and He didn't wear a mask. And He didn't wear a mask. Therefore, my religion says I can't either. It's disrespectful to God. However it is that you feel about that, it's the kind of thing that, what do you do as an employer? There isn't any clear guidance on this one, for sure. So best practices, you treat it as a request for an accommodation. See if there is anything that you could provide this employee as an accommodation to their religious objection to wearing a face mask that would allow them to be unvaccinated without a face mask back in the workplace. That's kind of a tall, order, especially given the standards. How are you going to create a safe workplace for someone who's unvaccinated, doesn't want to wear a mask, but has to be back in the workplace? I think in that situation, it's much easier to deny the request because you can't you can't, in a sense, create a safe workplace for an employee in that situation.
Right. And in that scenario, not only do you have the undue hardship analysis, but the employer might also be able to prove that having an unvaccinated and unmasked employee in the workplace poses a direct threat to the health and safety of the entire workforce.
Yeah, that's it.
Not just the workforce, but their loved ones, and they take it home. They might be vaccinated, but who else may have a medical problem at their house? That's certainly something I think about a lot.